Welcome, everybody. This is Rashad Woods, host of the Randomness of Nothing, the T.R.O.N podcast. Up from to our neighbors to the north, we got Kyle Smith. Really pleasure. Guy has a lot of enthusiasm. He's going to help you guys with a lot of different fields, confidence, and he's developed a really cool system that I was talking to him about earlier. I'll let him give more information about himself. Kyle, welcome to the show.
Dude, thank you very much for having me on. I very much appreciate it.
Absolutely. Why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm Kyle Smith. I'm a clarity consultant. That's what my title is. That's why I coined it. And I help folks get unstuck to be able to celebrate their wins and to be able to accomplish goals in less time. And I do this by going directly to their words and their stories and their breath, because every human being has, if they have thoughts between their ears and they have breath, then we can change some things and adjust it. So I developed Neuro Linguistic Somatic Experience as a practice.
That is really dope. And I was reading about that. First of all, I think in order for somebody, this is just my opinion, but I kind of read a little bit about you as well, too. People develop that from their own experiences in life and how they develop that to make that work for themselves. I'm not asking you to bare your soul or anything like that. Whether you choose to do so or not is, obviously up to you. But how did you get to a point where this worked for you and then you decided to develop a system?
Well, it started, the real quick summary is that my problems became my passions.
Okay.
So I solved my own problems, and where I was in 2016 was a very prominent change in who I was. Before that point, I was wearing the victim mentality. I had little self-respect. I had little self-love, and even remove the self from it, there was very little respect and very little love, either being projected or reflected. And I was the common denominator in the issues in my life. And rather than pointing and projecting and saying that my life is this way because of this, that, or the other, whatever story I could come up with, whatever story I could come up with, then when I decided to change that, it was over time and it wasn't a quick change. However, now with the practice, I've developed it into a much quicker pace. Okay. So between that point in time, I developed better communication skills, better ways to think about my thinking, and being able to adjust from who I disliked and had little respect for to someone that I actually respect and admire for the work that I'm putting in.
That's fantastic. Now, couple things. Did you have to do any I know you're a certified yoga instructor. So did that kind of segue itself into your process when you started doing yoga or physical fitness, and it kind of got you that confidence on where you needed?
Dude, so I'm not a certified yoga instructor. Before I was, for 13 years, I was a certified personal trainer and online nutrition coach.
Yeah. Got it.
And so from there, I just worked with people with their body, and it's great, because then you get to build the body. However, it's not the physical aspect that's oftentimes hindering us from making progress. It's what we're saying between the ears. It's going up to the source to influence our behaviors. So what I was able to, I lost my train of thought on that one. My bad.
No, you're fine. And so basically, when you were developing your system and you said, okay, I need to fix this with myself, was it a case of, did you document it? Did you read books? Did you say, okay, it took some of better practices and kind of instituted as your own?
Oh, perfect. Thank you. So I had a very big decision point, where it was in January of 2016, 2017, where I wanted to really make a pivot. So I made a Facebook post, which I believe most people have seen, where they're asking for help. Who do they know that could help? What resources do they have? So at that point in time, I made the decision that I wanted to change. So then I opened myself up to allow for that change to happen. I just sent something out and saw what happened. And then from there, I got a whole bunch of different resources, and I'm very open and curious to exploring different modalities, because modalities could be like different ways to get to the same point. So it could be breath work, it could be story work, it could be going to the gym, it could be long endurance events, it could be binging at a bar, whatever that is. And so when I made that decision to make that pivot and open myself to that opportunity, then those resources came to me, and then I just kept on exploring and found what works and what doesn't work. And so when I was able to switch through those modalities, those different trials, those different ways of people saying that this has helped them in this way, why not explore it and see if it works? Because I believe that everyone has the same desired outcome on the back end. Everyone wants to feel good. They want to feel peace. They want to feel confident. They want to feel badass. They want to feel like they can accomplish things.
It's funny you say that, because even the most successful people have insecurities and have self-doubt. And, and I think one of the interesting things, so a couple questions I had about your system was, number one, are you the only person who does this? Or have you trained other people in this process and say, okay, Kyle Smith's going on vacation for 2 weeks, but I really need my NLSE coach to talk to me. Do you have 2, 3 people, a group of people who are all that
solo
can be a
currently
resource for somebody?
and building towards that. So I made it so that it was and building towards that. I do want to. So I made it so that it was a different practice because I do want to duplicate the same process. So it's not just me; it's multiple people. Duplicate the same process. So it's not just me; it's multiple people being able to help more people.
How did it work when you started reaching out to people to get this process? Were people coming to you? Was it a case of like, hey, I want to have Kyle walk me through this process? Hey, this is success. This is a testimonial. And then you get more word of mouth referrals. Like, how can people want to reach out to you so you can build your brand, your business?
And beforehand, social platforms. This particular system is a combination of breathwork and storywork. This particular system is a combination of and breathwork I've been doing for 9 years. Things that make 9 years where I have breathwork I've been doing for 9 years where I have that as a regular practice. And cranked out some breathwork this morning. So breathwork is a way to engage with the body. So breathwork is a way to upregulate or down engage with the body, upregulate to upregulate or down depending on the temp. So depending on the tempo of your breathing to energize yourself, or if you find yourself where you're wound up to energize yourself, down, or if you find yourself so the breath wound up, you can use your is being able to take someone. So the breath thermometer, where there is being able to take someone from being external thermometer, stimulus, like what is going on, to the internal, and they external pivot over to a thermostat where they're adjusting their internal, and they pivot over to a thermostat where they're adjusting their internal temperature. And the breath is the language of the body. So when we're breathing high and tight, we're good to fight. Breath is the language of the body. So when we're breathing high, so when we recognize that, we can down regulate to that desired temperature. So we recognize that, we can down regulate to that desired temperature because there's nothing to be concerned about.
It's funny you mentioned that.
Totally.
How many times have you seen people lift weights and they're not breathing?
Totally.
Like, right? Like they don't breathe. It's like, or they're doing crunches, or like, you know, I do martial arts, right? And then you'll notice like somebody gets fatigued really quickly. And you're like, dude, breathe. And you know, you're you know, you're not helping yourself holding stuff in. And so part of, I can relate to that because then their energy levels start to calm down. So I can relate to that. I can relate to that. You know, that's pretty cool. But it's a process. I did it just during the activity itself.
And that's normal. I think of breath as the very first skill. I think of into this world as the very first skill that we learn when we come into this intentionally practice, and the skill that we practice the least. So like it's something that's very important, and when we put it on, so it's something that's very important, and breathing put it on. However, we can really get into the breathing enough, then we're good. However, we can really get into the body and get into the relax and find and be able to peace and be able to relax and find goodness, so that we can actually be able to create. So it does work similar to a meditation. However, so it does work similar to a meditation, sitting in stillness, than it being active meditation. Passive meditation, waiting in stillness, is meditation of meditation.
Okay. So yeah, I'm gonna get more tips on you about that. People who are listening, breathe if you're working out. Or
totally. And another thing as well, when you look at all those fail videos, another thing as well, workout, when you look at all those fail,
right. No kidding. No, exactly. So I got a list of questions because your background's so fascinating. What are the qualifications for a clarity consultant? How does one become one? I know you developed your own system, but it says you're a clarity consultant. So what courses would somebody take to get to that point?
That's an easier one to go with. The things that they would have to master. That was a clarity consultant is a job title. Things that they would have to master, because a clarity consultant is a job title that I created. And so I would be the main point of contact when it comes to. So I would be the main point of contact when it goes into where to learn breathwork and then master breath. Then it goes into where to learn story breathwork and then master breathwork. So for certification, storywork, there's the Enlifted method. So for certification, there's the Enlifted, and that's focused on story. So I went through there. That's focused on storywork, and so I went through their level 1, level 2. And then was able to start with folks immediately, and then as I integrated, was able to start with folks immediately, and then as I integrated, molded it into it, and just refined it. Then I just until I molded it to myself. Yeah, refined it until I thought to myself, yeah, let's get this out there.
That's awesome. So you know, I remember earlier when you talked about you got to that stage in life where you're like, hey man, I'm not liking where I'm at mentally, and it's starting to affect my health and well-being. There's a lot of studies that I read that particularly men that get to be post-college, adulthood, family, they start suffering from what they call male loneliness, right? Where if you actually ask most men, do they have somebody they can reach out to, or if they have close friends, it's really not, they may talk to a lot of people.
Like acquaintances.
They're not really friends with a lot of people. right? They don't
acquaintances.
right, and the majority of their time is either A, spent with their significant other, B, their kids, C, their job, and then watching TV or doing anything else. Have you seen people? Is there a certain segment of people that have reached out to you that kind of fit that kind of area in life?
With
Or just in
well,
general?
then improving the idea we spend our time to, which also is improving ourselves time around, because I believe which also that includes ourselves. I believe that because I feel about ourselves, the further off track I believe about ourselves. And so if we just come back to that, then we figure out. So if we just come, am I actually to that, or am I not? Figure out. Living into a purpose-driven life. Living into a purpose, because the difference between female and because we have male depression, because they're treated the same way, but they're both male depression. They're treated they're treated the same way, but they're both different. Ladies will speak to each other. So it's about how do you feel? How ladies feel speak to each other. And at the end of the day, it can be it's okay to feel sad. And then at the end of the day, it could be time with someone feel sad. Of advice. If you're spending time with someone, really helpful. Their piece of advice is it's okay to be sad. That's not really helpful in my mind.
It's funny you say that, because I could definitely see the point of view.
And so then
let's find a good place where you can be.
And so for men, we get based off of respect. And so we get the more respect we have either for ourselves, for others. So the more respect we have either that ourselves, for others, the respect that we into, as in we behave the way that we say we're going to behave. We're going to develop internal behave the way that we say we're going to behave. Over time, we're going to gain internal. Other people that respect themselves are game recognizing you're respecting people that respect themselves are going to see how you respect yourself, and they're going to respect you. That's what I would put, because I think most people would there was loneliness. So that's what I would put. I think most people would attribute. I would challenge that, because there's a cool example in World War II. I would challenge that. There's a cool example in World War II to be able to where people there were running short on people to be able to medical equipment to resources to the places around the city, medical equipment and resources. So they went into places around the cities that were homes, and they recruited folks that were bedridden, and they recruited folks that were bedridden for 5+ years. Bedridden, they never got out of bed. 5+ years. Then they never got out. Given the duty. Yeah. Duty, then being very important. They were purpose of duty being very important. They were given the duty of bringing resources to these people. They're given the duty of bringing resources to these people that have feel depression symptoms. Depression isn't because what we feel is a symptom of something. Depression is the symptom. The symptom side effect. It is something else. The symptom, and so that's where the stories come in. Okay, and so all of their depressive, so they had purpose. They were doing something that was of value. And so they had purpose. They were doing something that was of value. And so I would say that appreciation for the work they were doing.
I'm sure, like when that idea got brought to fruition, that probably didn't get received too highly until it realized that was the resources that were available to use in a situation like that. Because when you find out that kind of reverse their mental state, that makes a lot of sense, because now they had a purpose, right? So did you find that people found that their purpose, or that what made them feel a higher level of value, was a hobby, was being more involved with their spouse, was getting in shape? Was there any one particular thing that geared people towards, man, this is
when we get our alignment, when we get our behavior, when we get ourselves, we're seeing the progress of the things that we're doing about ourselves, we're seeing the progress of the things that we're
this is kind of two-pronged question. Somebody sees your website, sees your success, your system, they reach out to you. What questions do you ask them, like, to kind of say, is this program going to work for you? Because I'm sure you have expectations of that person that they have to follow. You're going to need to do this. I'm going to need this from you, X, Y, and Z. And so how does that process work if somebody comes up to you, hey, I'm having trouble with my wife, my kids, my job. I'm kind of lost in the sauce. I'm driving kind of home, foggy, and I kind of just don't have that level that I need to be at.
If I was chatting with someone right off the fly, it would be. If I was chatting with someone, where is it that you want to go? It would be. Have you done anything to do anything about this? Have you done anything then to do anything about this? just dive into then whatever their examples or stories or whatever they dive into whatever their or whatever they the folks that get the most out of it. The folks I can hear it. So in the conversation, these and I can hear it. So in the conversation, these three. So an example, three things that here for it, folks really get a lot. So an example, that one is they have that true folks really get a lot out of this is that one is they have to make changes and they've decided they want to make changes. They may not know how to make changes. However, they're coming they want to make changes. They may not know how to make the changes. However, they're coming to me, and that's because they want to figure out a way. The second one is, and that's cool. An openness to explore and different things. An openness to explore different things or experiences. Could be an openness to explore, and be curious about what is openness to explore and be curious about not having that resistance into it. It's more open-mindedness. Not having that resistance. And then the third thing is that they have openness or a willingness to test their pain. The third thing is that they have, because it's really painful, willingness to test confronting yourselves. Because it's really painful, prepared to confronting yourselves. And so if people are openness to explore themselves, they have the desire to change, and they have an openness to explore, those are the people that are going to get the most out of this. I was. Yeah.
So you're also an online fitness coach, right?
Yeah.
You were. Okay. So do you segue anything into what people eat, drink, smoke, etc.? You know, I'm not saying judgment here for anybody who does any of all that. But is it sit back and say, okay, we're going to try to balance these things out to make you get where you need to, because you may be spending too much time.
If I wanted to integrate the physical because right now I wanted to integrate the brain and the physical aspect, that's why right now it's just the brain. However, if I wanted to do a physical aspect, which I actually don't, I wouldn't take that physical which I actually don't. So it's really cool. I wouldn't take that. I see how this would work. So it's really cool. How I would integrate storywork and question. So how I would integrate storywork and I would start NLSE plus NLSE and figure out where I would start to make the NLSEs and their fitness, where the resistance, diet, whatever it is, nutrition. Are they drinking? Are they not drinking? Hobbies? Are they drinking? Are they drinking? Are they doing this? So I would start with going to give up this. Are they going to adopt it? Where they want to? So I would start with the root of it. Then the way that I go for phases is in the first phase. What I would do is then the way that I go for phases is in the first phase. What I would do is declutter those contamination stories, resistant stories, or we turn those contamination stories. When I say a story, I say it's anything. And when I say a story, I say it's a moment in time. It can be a experience. It's a memory. It could be a moment in time. Anything that can be written or articulated in conversation. Anything that can be written or articulated in conversation is a story.
Absolutely, it is.
To celebrate the wins of I would start with there and then get them to celebrate. Then past that point, I would get them to start then the target. Past that point, to lose 20 pounds to target. I want to lose. Then it would go. What's the story around that? You working towards it. What's it look like? The story of what it looks like. Working towards it. What's it look like? You working on the story of what it looks like. Be on the other side of it. Looking be present. That way, people have to be on the other side of it. And that way, people have it is frame going to the actual plan. And because what happens is decrease, we go into so much resistance, hesitancy, and fear, so much resistance and self-sabotage. It makes the doing and self-sabotage. So I believe that it makes the doing because it's not hard to. So I believe that it would be easy because it's not harder to change when we. It's harder when we get in our way.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that because when I worked out. I'm on pause right now. I have a herniated disc right now and a pinched nerve in my back. But there comes a point, and this is funny because now when you get worked out, and I was a skinny guy, I worked out, bulked up, but now my challenge right now is actually getting shredded, right? And you find that when you don't see immediate results right away, and that other 20% doesn't come like as easy as it was, like you weightlift decently for 3 months, you can bulk up. Right, that's I don't want to say that's easy, but you can find a way to get bulked up and get some muscles. But to actually get that down to a certain point, and then when you don't see the results, you're like, you know what, man, I'm just going to keep eating pizza because I've been on the treadmill for 3 months and it didn't work out. I guess I'll just have to live with how this looks, right? So your system could be, where do you actually need to be, and are you willing to give up X, Y, and Z to get, or are you just going to be satisfied where you're at and not get to
on that part as well, because I'm very data driven and decision making on that part as well. And so data driven that people don't do, and this goes with mind. One thing that people don't have awareness of their mind, present of their body, collecting is data. Don't have awareness of where we don't know how to adjust things in order data and information, make things. We don't know how to adjust things in order to get where we want to go. make things easier for us to get to where we want to go. Let's say it's like you weigh yourself every morning. Let's say it's like you weigh yourself every morning. Those two things, I'll actually say exactly what it is. Those two things, this hydration, actually say exactly physical activity, sleep, stress, hydration, activity, focus on, and stress. I said those are the only things that you really focus on. When you collect the data and we're able to see metrics of how many steps we did, collect the data and we're able to see the metrics of how many steps we did, take anything else out, and that could be it. Physical activity, only steps. Nutrition, take anything else out, only steps. Measure things out, just so that you have a reference point. Then measure things out, awareness, so that you have a reference how things are changing. Then and the awareness of the truth being in front of how things are changing, more likely to and the awareness of the truth being in front of us. So people have a resistance to tracking. My resistance. So people have a resistance to tracking, and this was my resistance to tracking because I like to see that progress. And so when it comes to the resistance to tracking, I believe my story was comes to I just resistance to tracking. I believe, or my story was that I just didn't want to see the truth.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, right? So, a long time ago, I used to scan. I had an app that scanned every single piece of food I ate, right? And then when you realize like you already had like 1,500 calories just from breakfast, right? And you're like, damn. And then like a month later, you know what? I don't even want to see it because I know I'm going to eat it, right? But you didn't actually want to own up to what you were really eating, right? You have the sausage, the eggs, the pancakes.
It was so good.
It's fantastic, right? And you're just like,
totally.
But you're lying to yourself. And like you said, if you don't do that every day, or you don't have it where you're like, okay, I got a good memory to base that from, I'm cheating myself, right? And so that one killer workout you did got blown away with one meal.
Yeah, very well could have been.
So my question is that this almost sounds really good for an app. I know you have your website, but it seems like this system would be really beneficial to somebody who had a mobile app that you had those steps in case they didn't have time to sit down with you. Is that a thought that you had developed for this?
And I'm pondering it now how it would look. How do you think it would look?
I mean, you could have it like, just off the top of my head, age, female, male, questions about mental state, weight, what are your goals? And then how they have like those step questions that people ask along the way. And then it's kind of like, okay, this is the tailor-made program for you that you should be following. And then if you had it, you could have like a free trial, but then other items aren't available unless you have a subscription to it. Because I think that would be beneficial to you, especially being solo.
I would integrate an app. I would definitely integrate the physical aspect to it. Because I think that would be
Right. Because the number one thing, and then, like every app wants to have a reminder, right? Every time you download something, notifications. But I think this one, and I don't need notifications from, Ring doorbell I have. And I'm like, dude, every time a cat walks past my house, I'm like, stop pinging my phone. But if you had something like this, particularly when it was, did you do this today that you said you were going to do for the entire week? Whether it's eating that popcorn or even just like that Netflix chill time you think you're entitled to when you should be working on where you need to be, the goal you're looking to pursue. That I think this would be helpful to people because then that would make them also
that's legit. I like that. I would be able to. Yeah, that's legit. I like that. I would be able to just spitball in because the way I would organize it. The way I would organize it, how I would brainstorm, it would be broken. The way I would organize it, how I would envision doing it, it would be broken up. Let's see, how would I break that down? So one thing for sure is that there would be aspect at the end of the day where they celebrate 3 wins of the day. Aspect at the end of the day where they celebrate 3 wins of the day. In that same
that would be great. Right.
And then it would actually pop in that same note. So it would create its own, and then it would actually pop on over, and then so it would create its own that part wouldn't pop, and then it would be that part 3 wins I want to have for tomorrow. Then it would be what are the 3 wins I want to have for tomorrow. Totally.
Yeah, like if you integrate their calendar, right, or if it has its own calendar, because I think when people celebrate wins, even the small ones, like today, had 8 glasses of water instead of my pop, right? I took a walk, to see this particular experience and appreciate this level. I think people, their system almost, because people reach a stage in life and wherever they reach that, they get to a point where things can get kind of monotonous and they can go through the motions. And I think that's when bad thoughts start to seep in people's head because they've kind of lost their purpose a little bit, right? And it's hard to get out of that because then what tends to happen is if you have kids, you start snapping at your kids. If you have a significant other, you start snapping at your significant other. I'm not a pet person, but maybe with you're a pet, you start shoving the dog. I don't want to do blah, 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 blah. Right? So I think if you had milestones and celebrations for people, then that would be very beneficial too. You know, maybe today on that particular moment, hey, I'm going to go to this adult meet and greet to meet new people. I'm going to go to this yoga session. I'm going to meet 3 people at X, Y, and Z that I was always wanting to do but didn't. So you can, you know, that's tailor made for that particular person. I think that would be ultimately helpful, you know, and then they can reach out to you on a case by case basis.
Something that I am working on right now. I'll share what I'm working on right now. That's cool. Something that I am working on right now. I'm working on like group community with curriculum, working on the group community with practices behind storywork, which I call it narrative practices, and which I call it narrative architecture. So it would be 2 segments with that one, and then building the breath. So it would be 2 segments. It has a calendar. They have community sessions and stuff. So it'd be pretty sweet. It has a calendar in it.
Dope. So I saw that you have your thought process: be positive, be sovereign, savage, and
a savage sovereign servant. A savage sovereign servant. That is a
so what is that
of my mission statement? That is a part of my mission statement for myself. And projection of my it's also a projection characteristics we admire and resent, because in others we can only recognize what we've seen in ourselves. Reverse that, where's the admiration. So what do I want to reverse that? Where's the admiration? What do I want to project that I am living up to internally to this world? So that I am living up to internally. Same intention for the participants that I get to intention. So I hold my own intention, and then they bring their own intention to work with. Intentionality is very big, and then they bring their own intention. And so intentionality, the full statement is. And so my mission, the full statement is in pursuit of self-betterment. My mission contribution, the persistent pursuit of self-betterment, to be a positive contribution to the human race, and to be a sovereign, savage servant.
Awesome. So one thing that I thought was very, very important, and I think I struggled with this even when I was starting this podcast, was time management. I mean, because people have a tendency to, you know, the most successful people have the exact same amount of time in the day that you and I have, right? So what did you find out when you were dealing with people who adopted your system or who were clients of yours? Did you find out how much time they were really wasting, or that they weren't using productive wise?
Myself,
maybe yourself
certainly.
included?
And for others, certainly. I don't. And for others, because I introduce different frames, I introduce different frames. I ask them, are you open to an idea? And I do this because I ask them, are you open to individuals to figure out their own problems? And I do this because I want the individuals to figure out their own problems. I believe that it's not what to do that stands in our way, it's how we think. I believe that it's not what to do that stands in our way, it's how we think.
Yeah, because it's not really you have to tell me what your problem is, and then we can work towards it. Because, you know, at some point, they'll say, this is what I'm missing in my life.
Totally.
But if you can't drag it out of somebody, you know, you're going to sit back and say, okay, these are the things that you've... And what's crazy is sometimes people will be accomplished. They'll have a family. They'll have the house. They'll take the 3 vacations a year. The kids are, you know, model to do family. But then when you talk to the person, they're like, man, I lost my purpose. And, you know, I think when you find out where their time management is and when they open up to you, and positivity probably goes a long way to decrease the negativity that could be in their lives as well, too. Do you hear a lot of people, you know, have those things, particularly when they're married, kids, and they're kind of just doing...
I would say that works similar to food. How we have, I believe it's caloric intake.
Right.
83,400 seconds in a day. 83,000. So how do we allocate those seconds that we get? And so allocate focus goes to seconds that we get. People are more focused on Netflix than going to the gym. Flows. If people are more focused on Netflix than going to the gym, if people are going to do that, spending time by themselves, focused on people, they're going to do that. Spending time by themselves. And so I think that when it comes to time allocation and being able to adjust time, when it comes to time, understanding that time, we are not owned by time. It's understand time. We are not owned by time or time. I'm big with calendars. If it's in my calendar, then I'm going to be there. I'm big with calendars. If it's in my calendar, then I'm going to be there.
I've noticed that. I've noticed by using the calendar, you know, especially since doing this podcast, it's like, it's one thing to send an email, but when you put that calendar that I'm speaking with you at this time, then I know I have to have everything else I had accomplished to meet that time with you, right? As opposed to, you know, sometimes you look at 2:00 and it's 10, that's just 4 hours. But if you have 2:00 on your calendar, I need to do these 5 things before 1:30. So I am prepared for my conversation with Kyle. So because HR can...
it's been good. Not yet. I'm working towards conversation though. So it's been good. Yeah, I'm working towards it.
Okay. Well, I'll leave it at that because I know that those have to be, quiet kept till they meet their respective moment. But I think that would be beneficial to people, right? Because the last thing anybody wants to see is a disengaged person wherever they're at. Yeah, that's awesome. So that kind of took care of 2 questions right now. Do you attend any seminars for, even though you've developed your system, you sit back and say, I need to add this because this has been
well, I like to go. That would be 2 parts. If I like to go resonate really well with the system, then I may resonate really well with the system, go in, then I may assumption that I'm going to integrate it. However, I don't go in with the assumption that I'm going to integrate it. I love whether it's in person or I love going to work, especially whether it's in person or online, or it's even awesome when it's at home too, like here. Travel, I love it. It's even awesome when it's at home too, like here. Oh, I love it. A lot of my work in solitude, and also I thought that I had about a lot of my work monotony of solitude, and also I think that monotony about not the monotony of the day. Is that we're not liking monotony is not negative. Because I actually find that not like be abundant and joyful. Because I actually find that more to be abundant and joyful, scarce and aggressive, wound more boring, and so people are resistant to that because it's less exciting. And so people are resistant to that because it's less exciting. And for that, because I spend plenty of solid time by myself, because my whole office is spend plenty of solid time by myself. I like going there. Offices in my back. If I don't consciously make a decision, I like going there because people. Then if I don't consciously make my decision to go and then just keep working, then I have problems with being in my own world and just keep working.
Some pictures of you in that beautiful background that you get to have up in beautiful Edmonton. I'm envious about that. Those outdoors, right? Man, it looks great out there. Right? So it looks like that's really harmonious for you because a lot of people don't have those surroundings, right? And ultimately, your surroundings can dictate your mood. So, when I was in Vancouver, what was really cool was you could be in the mountains, you could be downtown, and you could be at the beach in the same city. In the same, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I was like, I walked around, we were there for 3 days, and people were happy. You're judging just by the, the visual of it all. But I was sitting back and saying, I was like, how could you be miserable out here? This is beautiful. Right? You can climb, you can ski, et cetera, et cetera. So I think your surroundings could ultimately dictate what you make of those surroundings too. Because, if you're in that crowded downtown and business is busy, and then you go up to that mountain and
just chill.
Find that good period in life.
Just chill.
Yeah. And so that's really cool. How do you have, I know I've probably pinpointed this a little bit. Who's the primary people that reach out to you? Like, if you had to say, this is kind of the 75% I see this kind of person that want to use my system. What's the,
percentage are folks that have done a majority percentage work are folks that have done a solid chunk of work on themselves, and then they already reached putting into a video game. They finished the main quest, the main objective, and now they finished the main quest, the main side quest. And then the follow up to that would be folks that, and then the follow up to that would be breakups. I get breakups. Honestly, breakups pretty often. I get dreams off breakups. Dreams. I get dreams often as well. Purpose. Let's see. Diving into dreams, creating breakups, and then diving into dreams. There's heavy ones, and then I had a couple death stories. There's healing. I had a couple death stories, a couple healing stories where they're going through a recovery of some sort.
So one thing that struck me the most about the story that you have and how you came from your places. I've asked a couple people this. Has the internet helped it out when it comes to resources that are available and kind of democratize the process? And they always say it kind of remove quote unquote stigmas for reaching out to help. Have you found out that before, if I had issues when at this age, you had to yellow page it and maybe people kind of just had to internalize it versus saying, hey, here's a social media post, and then you can get people quicker. But sometimes the internet can have all those things that are not positive from what you asked, because people sometimes are insensitive or they think that they just want to get a like. So have you found the internet to be more helpful when it comes to achieving your goals for help?
I found the internet. Have I found the internet helpful for? Have I found the internet helpful for my goal helping?
Finding people quicker.
Oh yeah.
And finding more.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
kind of democratize the process a little bit to where people can get help. Maybe you're even helping somebody remotely.
I would say absolutely. Totally. I would also say absolutely. I view the internet as a tool. I would also say any other tool, and it's the internet as a tool, just like any other tool, and it's the intentions behind the use that's going to give us that we want. So I think that the internet has been awesome because where the sovereign. I think that the internet has been awesome because where the sovereign aspect comes in with my own or my personal anchor or my reference point mantra is to have complete autonomy. My reference point is to have complete autonomy, and not have depend on independence, external sources, have to depend on desires and external sources. And so I believe that the internet created the environment where. And so I believe that the internet created the environment where when people can utilize that flow, which when people can utilize that flow, when they can utilize the flow, or try to easier to be able to, when they can utilize the flow, it becomes a lot easier to be able to reach individuals. I personally like it where it goes into the layer of in person. I personally like it where online it goes into the layer, and then I want in person converse with folks that online connect, have other people, and then I also want to converse with folks that have other people that may be interested in something like this.
For sure. So, do you have any meetups or I hate to even use the analogy, but kind of like a group session kind of deal with all the people and they kind of talk back and forth, or you have a Zoom call with all the people that you help? Are people open to that, like kind of testimonial a little bit and bounce off what worked for these people? Is that something that you've done with some of your clients?
So I would do community sessions for sure. And so I would community sessions for sure. The theme. And then community sessions are usually when it comes to, let's say it's for and then when it comes to either let's say it's for feedback, I would either end them on the spot and there I just see what your feedback would be. Because I from there find that see what their feedback. A lot of people because I find that I find a lot of people I'm able to get better information by asking someone one-on-one. I'm able to get greater information by asking someone just been a little bit. Most people, when they have that ability to just, if someone has a similar have that ability, rather than staying quiet, they're going to share that thought too. And I could see that rather than staying quiet, they're going to share that thought too. And I can see that, X amount of people have this particular thing in common. How can I this or integrate it?
What's the time frame for success of your program? Is it tailor-made to a person, or do you see at 2 months you should be at this, 30 days you should be here, 60 days you should be here, 90 days you should be here, 120, and if you need longer, then that's kind of tailor-made to me and you. But how does the program work as far as time frames are concerned?
Very short. For time frames, I would say on average, depending on very short, it can be very quick. I would say on average, because we're feeling better about ourselves, and it happens internally, so it happens because we're feeling better about ourselves, and it happens for NLSE, it happens like somatic experience. For NLSE, Neuro Linguistic real time. We're not waiting. It's not the same as real time. We're not waiting. It's not the same when we start working out at the gym. Another fitness reference. We haven't gotten an aha moment where there hasn't been. We haven't gotten pattern brain moment, or there hasn't been indicating that what we're doing is good. But if we get to a certain point, indicating that what we're doing is good. Sucks. I'm going to. So if we get to that certain point, we're like, oh, this sucks. I see that as where I was doing. You pop one tire on the car. I see that as car, and instead of changing one tire on the car, continuing on, get out of your response. And instead of changing, you decide to pop the other three on until the body responds. You decide to pop the other 3 tires. Totally.
Because the negativity compounded.
And so the aha moment doesn't happen to get like it's really difficult, like from physical because we're working with that brain and the mindset and the nervous because we're brain to the mindset and to the root nervous, and so that's when it's really total root. It feels really good. So that's when it's really potent and it feels really want to be able to. So as long as folks go into it, to be able to, then it can take anywhere from. Go into it, then it can take anywhere from where it's really, really good, 1 month, up to where it's really, really good, up to 12 months if they up to desire. And I have had, so I've also been able to do that. And I have had, so I've also been able to do that where it's been, we have a specific thing that we want to do within those and we have a specific thing that we want to do within just reframe everything and organize everything in the brain. Then I just organize it and reframe everything and organize everything in the brain, create it and organize it, and then create it and crush it.
Well, kind of the reason I asked that is because people, particularly in this IT and everything's an app, expect instant gratification now, right? I subscribe to that streaming service. It better work right after I downloaded it, right? I ordered that pizza on that app, and even though the process of making the pizza hasn't gotten any quicker, the fact that I was able to access that on my phone meant that it actually should be made faster. So I'm going to drive to the store in 10 minutes, and I'm going to be complaining when it's not ready. man, it still takes
Totally.
30 minutes to cook pizza just because you ordered
Mhm.
10 seconds. So
Totally.
I think that by you having things that happen quicker for people and they see something quicker happen, it channels that immediate result. Because
Mhm.
with this, rather than the gym is hard because you
Mhm.
really have to actually and not look at the scale and stay away from the mirror because it is a long process.
May I
to
challenge
make
that one?
physical changes when it comes to working out.
Step
May
on
I
the scale
challenge that one?
and look in the mirror
Yeah,
until you're
absolutely.
happy with what you step.
Really? You know, and that's one of the reasons, like, I came here. No problem having my opinion changed, right? And I can't tell you, like, you know, I've looked at the scale and people have said, hey, you've lost weight. Dude, I haven't seen any improvement on this scale at all. I have personal goals that I want to meet. But I think the number one thing that inspired me to do this podcast was kind of the steps that you've taught. Like, I had to stop procrastinating and get out of my own head. And by doing that, this has been very satisfactory because I've got a chance to meet a lot of interesting people. And your NLSE system, when you read about, you know, somebody who's enthusiastic, who's loving the outdoors, who's living life to his fullest, who says, hey man, for lack of a better term, man up in the good sense, not in the beat you up sense. It gives you that extra boost to make sure that you reach out to that next
Cool.
person to hear the next inspiring story. And that's kind of what this show is
Cool.
all about, right? What's going to make you ultimately take the next step and get out of your own head? And I think that's important. And this has been very, very good because now I'm going to make sure that I set daily goals for myself by setting a calendar, setting goals. Did I do this today? And then referencing back to that. So anybody who's listening, I think you guys should be listening to Kyle, and I don't want to overtalk him. He's the guest. Put things in a calendar and write them down.
Absolutely. And another thing that I'll put as a reference too is
absolutely.
when we put things in
another
the
thing
calendar,
that
and
I'll
when
put
we
as a
do what we say
reference
we're
too
going to
is
do, then we're able to see how we're
and
when we do what we say we're going to do, then we're able
towards
to
our
see
goals,
how we make,
and that takes us
away
making
from
gains
always
towards our
focusing
goal.
on the gap, and that
Where
takes
we
us
are now
away
and
from
where
where we get to
always
see
focusing
how
on the
we've
gap
actually closed
between
that
where we are
gap
now and
rather
where we
than
want to
just
be.
we get to see how we've actually closed that gap rather than just the gap itself.
So, well, I appreciate that, and I'm sure I hope to follow up with you. You know, further, and you have your app, and I'd love to download it
Cool.
with you when you create one. So when you do, let me
Mhm.
know. So
Cool.
you're based out of Edmonton. Do you help people that are from anywhere? Have you had people say, "Hey, man, I just need online coaching"?
Most of the peeps are out of Edmonton. Most of the peeps are out of Edmonton. There's 2, 3. There are probably 3 at this point. They're actually based at this point, and outside of that, they're in the east side based in Edmonton, and outside of that, the United States, the east side folks are in the United States, and folks are in everywhere. Yeah, I'm not limited to folks everywhere. Yeah, I'm not limited to location.
I think you're finding out too that with your system, that I can tell is that a lot of people think the same way, that they have put things off or not accomplished what they wanted to, and they reach out to somebody like you to help them break through that wall, right? And I'm sure what you found out is a lot of things are just, you know, hey, I got divorced or I got too busy, you know, and things just sort of snowball.
Yeah, things can snowball, and people can say it's too busy. Things can snowball, and people can say it's too busy. However, I think that a lot of people say often it's too busy.
Right.
It's
Well,
often,
Kyle, you know, did you have any questions? Did you have any questions for me? So, you know, about the T.R.O.N podcast, about, you know, things that I'm, you know, just anything for me in general, because I know that we chatted briefly, but I know that we're wrapping up soon, so I want to get a chance to
come up with one that's good. Let's see. Let me think of a come up. I'll come up with one that's good. I'll go with a deep one. You ready? What meaning do you want to have?
Oh, that's a tough one. That's deep. I would say that when you look back at your life, are you going to be happy with the story that it told? So ultimately, you know, I'm 41 years old. And so I looked at this podcast and I said, am I going to be in 10 years saying why I didn't do this? Because it's too hard, because I wanted to stay in my comfort zone, because I was scared that people would, quote unquote, not laugh about it, but why are you doing that, man? That's going nowhere. And for anybody that, even if it doesn't blow up or do great things, it's the journey along the way. It's experiencing new things. So I wanted to make sure that this was something that I wanted to do. And then the second leg to that is I can't program. I can't fix cars. I'm not an electrician. All those people have a highly unique skill set. What you do, I can't do, right? You know, when it comes to NLSE. So what I said, what's the one thing that I'm kind of gifted with? I like to talk. right? I like to learn new things. My mind's always, learning with buzzwords. And I know, like, if you sat at a barbecue with me, I'd reference something so
Likewise.
obscure and stupid, you'd probably look it up on your phone.
Likewise.
Right. You'd be like, dude, how did you know something like that? Like, I just did, man. I read about it. I looked it up and I researched it. Small talk like that is therapeutic to me. So I wanted to put that to good use.
Cool.
So
I like that. Great answer. Cool. I like that. Great answer.
Appreciate that. Well, Kyle Smith, you've been on the Tribe podcast. Tell people how they can find you. Ultimately, I certainly want to.
Like I mentioned earlier, my socials are Dapper Dude. Like I mentioned earlier, my socials are Dapper Dude, DUDEKYL, DAPPER. At any of those links, anywhere there, you'll be able to. And I also have my own any of those links. Anywhere there, you'll be able to. I also have my own podcast called The Limitless Life because I'm this posted last year and break this year because I'm going to check out this practice, more talks and more conversations there. So you can check out more talks and more Instagram, I'm the quickest with responding. And then Instagram, I'm the quickest with responding. I'll put that in too.
I got to tell you one thing, Kyle. You inspired me. You made me realize that life's too short to complain and procrastinate. And I hope people are inspired. This is what this show is all about, man. I appreciate you and your time very much.
Likewise.
Take it easy, brother.
You as well.